Sarah pressed her palm against the kitchen window, watching the rain blur the world outside into watercolor streaks. 3 weeks had passed since anyone had seen her son, Dylan. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, unanswered prayers, and search parties that returned with nothing but sympathetic looks and empty hands. The police had scaled back their efforts. The neighbors had stopped bringing casseroles. Even hope, that stubborn thing that lived in her chest, had begun to flicker and fade. Her husband Mark sat at the table behind her, staring at his untouched coffee. They had become ghosts in their own home, drifting past each other in silence, afraid that words might shatter whatever fragile composure they still possessed. Their 12-year-old son had vanished walking home from soccer practice, swallowed by the autumn dusk as if he had never existed at all. Then came the tapping. At first, Sarah thought she had imagined it. A soft, rhythmic sound against the glass. Tap, tap, tap. She turned to see a German shepherd standing in their backyard, one paw raised, deliberately striking the window. The dog's dark eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. It wasn't their dog. They had never owned a pet. Dylan had begged for years, but Mark's allergies had always made it impossible. The tapping continued. Tap, tap, tap. Persistent, purposeful. Mark looked up from his coffee. What is that? Sarah opened the back door, and the dog immediately turned and trotted toward the fence line, then stopped, looking back at her expectantly. When she didn't follow, it returned to the window. Tap, tap, tap. Its eyes never left hers, and in them Sarah saw something that defied explanation, intelligence, urgency, desperation. I think it wants us to follow, she whispered. Mark stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Sarah, it's just a stray. But Sarah was already pulling on her coat. Something primitive stirred in her mother's heart, an instinct older than language. The dog resumed its tapping the next morning, and the morning after that. Each time, it would wait at the window until Sarah came outside, then lead her a few steps farther into the woods behind their property before she lost her nerve and turned back. On the 7th day of the dog's vigil, Mark finally agreed to follow. They walked together into the dense forest, the German shepherd leading them along paths Sarah had never noticed before. The dog moved with certainty, occasionally stopping to ensure they kept pace. An hour passed, then 2. Sarah's legs ached, and doubt crept in like the evening shadows lengthening between the trees. We should turn back, Mark said, but his voice carried no conviction. The dog stopped at an old hunting cabin, nearly invisible beneath decades of ivy and neglect. It scratched at the door and barked once, sharp and commanding. Mark pulled the door open, and the smell hit them first. Damp earth, mildew, and something else, something human. In the corner, barely visible in the dim light filtering through broken boards, was Dylan. Sarah's scream was both agony and relief. Her son lay on a pile of moldy blankets, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, his lips cracked and colorless. But his chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. He was alive. Mark already had his phone out, shouting their location to emergency services, while Sarah cradled Dylan's head in her lap. Her tears fell onto his pale cheeks and his eyes fluttered open. Mom? The word was barely a whisper. The dog. Did you see the dog? Yes, baby, yes, we saw him. He brought us to you. Dylan's cracked lips formed the ghost of a smile. I knew he would. When I fell and couldn't walk, I thought I was going to die here. Then he showed up. Kept me warm at night. Brought me water in his mouth from the stream. I told him to find you. I told him every day. Sarah looked up, searching for the German shepherd, but the dog had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Mark stood in the doorway, his face wet with tears, scanning the forest. Where did it go? They never saw the dog again. Dylan recovered in the hospital, his broken leg mended, his body slowly regaining the weight he had lost. The story made national news. Search and rescue teams combed the forest, looking for the mysterious German shepherd that had saved the child's life, but found nothing. No tracks, no sightings. No owner ever came forward. 3 months later, a letter arrived from a woman named Margaret Chun, living 2 states away. She had seen their story on the news. Her son had been a Marine who died overseas, she wrote. Before he left, he had trained his German shepherd, Atlas, who had died of old age just 4 days before Dylan went missing. She included a photograph. Sarah's hands trembled as she looked at the image. The same dark, intelligent eyes, the same coloring, the same noble face. "I don't believe in coincidences anymore," she told Mark that night, holding the photograph to her chest. Mark pulled her close, and for the first time in months they cried together. Not tears of grief, but of gratitude for mysteries that could not be explained, for love that transcended understanding, and for the inexplicable grace that sometimes arrives precisely when we need it most, wearing a collar we cannot see, answering prayers we were too afraid to speak aloud.